All right, welcome everybody to the evacuation edition of Under the Dome. And for somebody who didn't evacuate, is up in north, not far south from me. Sean's having all kinds of trouble tonight getting in. So as soon as he joins, we'll just jump right into the conversation. I'm your host, Alan Orick, here with Mr. Bob Rose. I am broadcasting from town just outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, called Bryant, Texas. So it's not bad. This is actually a good place. I think this is a pretty rural community because where our hotel is, it's right off the interstate, and there is like 42 restaurants right here. There's a Lowe's, there's a Walmart, there's a Target. I mean, everything is like within 2 or 3 miles driving distance. So it's like everybody, we're going to town, and then they make one stop hit, and then they head on back wherever they come from. So it's not bad. Hey Genevieve, how are you? Let's see. Sean wants me to send them the link again. Let's see if I can.
Well, while you're doing that, and Alan, I know you echo this, I'd like to throw out my thoughts and prayers. Certainly for everybody in the Gulf Coast region that stayed. Hopefully you made it out of the storm safely, and you're still hanging in there. You have food, water, power-wise, and obviously everybody that evacuated. I hope you got out safely and with as little hassle as possible. And that when you go back, you don't have to suffer through a major property loss. Obviously, life and family is more and most important. But in a catastrophe like this, there are certain things that simply cannot be replaced property-wise too. And I feel for you all. I reached out to a few of you. When I've had opportunities, my DMs and texts are always open if you need to talk. I wish I was in a position to help out any of you financially, especially Alan. You and I have grown extremely close. Same with Sean. I wish I was in a better position financially, but certainly my thoughts, prayers are with you, and if there's anything that I can do, I will.
Well, I'm in a good position to. I mean, I can't. My job allows me to work remotely. I will get paid regardless if I'm in the office or not. The hardest part, I went through this 16 years ago with Katrina. I didn't have much damage then, but I was gone for a month from the city. I came in one weekend, that was Labor Day weekend, to clean out my refrigerator and my freezer and just throw all that crap away. And then we came back the last week of September to come back to my house. And I had lost some shingles. My fences blew down. This time around, I'm in a different house with a lot more trees. And I had two big water oak trees in my front yard. They're good, 60, 70 feet tall. And it was, there was no way. I mean, there was no way these things were going to survive. I had thinned them out, and they both fell on my house. I can see from the pictures my dad took, it looks like I've got some damage done to the roof over my garage. I have holes poked in the roof. But he looked in through the back door, and he said he couldn't see anything, but that doesn't mean anything. He couldn't see if anything like sheetrock had fallen, from the ceiling or anything like that. So this is a lot more serious than what I went through after Katrina. We were planning doing renovations to our house anyway, but if our house is unlivable right now, that's a bigger challenge.
Sure.
And I didn't have to go through that last time. Once we got back, I mean, it was a matter of just getting a new roof and getting my fences put up. This was a new roof, ironically, I put up last year. So, I mean, that's tough. That's tough. Okay, Sean keeps trying to get in. I don't know if he can. I keep trying to add him, but there's nothing. See, you can see the pinwheel, the Billy Preston will go around in circles wheel of death here. Um, and the big news that came out today was that the Saints are not going to play in Dallas's stadium, Jerry's World, because there's a concert, I think, either Saturday night or Sunday night. I'm not sure.
The concert is actually on September 15th. So 3 day, what's that, Wednesday? 3 days after what the game is scheduled. The band, and forgive me if I don't remember their name, but they don't deserve free publicity anyway at this point, in my opinion. They claim, and the stadium officials claim, that it's going to take 3 days to get the stadium concert ready. Now, listen, everybody knows that that's BS. There's been plenty of venues that have hosted a concert the night before a football game, or had a football game the night before a concert, back-to-back major football events, that kind of thing. So whatever is going on there, like you said, it forced the Saints, who had to evacuate over the weekend, evacuate team operations, and will be operating out of either Dallas and practicing at TCU facilities for at least the next month, and now forces the Saints to play in Jacksonville on Sunday, September 12th against the Green Bay Packers. And I did take the liberty of looking a little bit ahead. Luckily, only 2 of the first 7 weeks of the football season were the Saints scheduled to play at home. Obviously, week 1, and then not again until Sunday, October 3rd, against the New York Giants. Now, if you're going to look that far, certainly we hope that not only New Orleans but the entire Gulf Coast region, is back up to normal, or very close to it by that point. But if the Saints stay outside of New Orleans extends, October 3rd against the Giants is going to be a schematic problem too, because the Cowboys host the Panthers that day. Tampa Bay will be, if you're looking for other close venues, Tampa Bay will be at New England, and Jacksonville will again be open because the Jaguars are on a bye. Houston Texans are at the Buffalo Bills too. After that, the next 2 Saints home games are the Halloween game against the Buccaneers, and November 7th against the Falcons. If you're talking a real catastrophe here, and the Saints really still aren't able to come back to New Orleans by that point, you would think that the NFL would do the sensible thing and simply flip-flop the Buccaneers and Falcons home games to later in the season, the home away. But we shall see, and we can only take it one step at a time, obviously. So that's what we're looking at for Sunday the 12th against the Packers to open the season. And like I said, I just threw out potential options if this thing extends into early October against the Giants.
Yeah, it's important to note too. There's nothing wrong with the Superdome. The Superdome was not used as a shelter. That's not happening anymore. Shelter of last resort. That's what happened with Katrina. There was nothing structurally done to the dome to make it unplayable. There's no holes in the roof. The seats aren't trashed. None of that stuff has happened. The dome is fine. I think Dave. I'm not Dave. I cannot think of the man who Doug Thornton. Doug Thornton had a story come out the other day about, that he inspected the dome, and except for one window that leaked, nothing was wrong with the dome. So the dome can host it. It's the problem you have right now is all the debris outside of the city where you would go to the game, and of course you get the power and the water that you need not only for the homes but also for the stadium to operate.
Right.
It would be a dark stadium they're playing in. So, that's what's wrong with it. And the same with the practice facility. That's what's going on with the practice facility. Minimal damage to the practice facility. It's just no power and very little water pressure out there. So those things have to be corrected first. So, we're looking at maybe a month. It's not a situation like it was after Katrina where the dome was destroyed basically, and they had to get special permission for disaster relief where they could play in San Antonio and Tiger Stadium. The league isn't going to allow them to play just a couple of games in Tiger Stadium. They want an NFL stadium.
Yeah.
They want an NFL stadium, NFL locker rooms, NFL media access, all the things. And, you and I, we're looking at a game going, well, yeah, they could play in Baton Rouge or they could play at UL's Field. It's not set up and designed for an NFL game,
Right.
And that is a big difference. Tiger Stadium, for example, has a natural grass field. And if LSU plays on Saturday night and the Saints have to play a noon kickoff on Sunday, which they did have to do in 2005, that field is torn to hell. The hash marks are wrong. They had to put extra hash marks. The goalposts aren't right. LSU still uses the traditional, two-sided goalpost, not an NFL goalpost. So there's a lot of logistic problems that just don't work out. So that's why Anna's still without power. Anna, you're in. Aren't you in or around Baton Rouge? I'm not sure. I don't remember where exactly you live anymore, but yeah. So Baton Rouge did get some of it. I know.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So it's a temporary thing. It's not Katrina. Yeah, Anna does live in around Baton Rouge. Okay. Yeah, I know. And the fuel is the number one thing because some people have generators now after Katrina. It's so hard to get gasoline.
Yeah, I've read, and like you said, yeah. Luckily, it's not a structural damage issue with the Superdome or the facility or anywhere in the immediate surrounding area. But just so many logistics and schematics. Debris has to be cleared out. Power, electricity. And obviously, and they're still surveying, loss of life and rescue operations too. Now, this is still early on in the process. So what I'd mentioned about the potential issue with the October 3rd game against the Giants, the Saints' next scheduled home game, we're getting into worst case scenario. And I agree with you. I don't see that happening, but I will be writing an article about such a thing tomorrow. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least look ahead at the possibilities over the next few home games.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. And so much of this is unknown because, Entergy has told me in text messages that you should have power within 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We're in day 3 after the storm. 3 weeks, end of September. We had a meeting at my a Teams meeting from my office talking about what are we going to do in the meantime, because we have work we have to do. We need power to do that.
Right.
So that's all things that we have to deal with. So, it's a logistical problem that affects every aspect of life, and then talking about hotel rooms where you have first responders staying, hotels that may not can be occupied because they have no power. So there's a lot of things you have to work out first. The good news is, though, this is not a Katrina year. This is not a team that's going to go 3-13 and practice in high school fields and not knowing, they're having a weight room down in a waterworks place. There's a lot that they learned from Katrina to better prepare themselves for this kind of situation. So we're in a much better place than we were 16 years ago. We have a much better coach and a much better team too. With much better
leadership. Absolutely. And I thought I know a lot of the fans were disappointed, but I absolutely thought that the Saints and the NFL, and make no mistake about it, the Saints were the ones that made the decision first, to cancel the Saturday preseason finale against Arizona before the Cardinals got into town. And in one swift move, they immediately moved. They were well prepared for this, as prepared as you can be. They moved entire organization and its operations over to Dallas. Where say what you will about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis have always had a good relationship with Jerry, and the Cowboys welcomed him in with open arms immediately. And the business of the NFL, fortunately / unfortunately, continues to trudge on because the Saints had to make their roster cuts down to a 53-man roster yesterday. We're adding people onto their practice squad all day through today. And like you said, this organization is so much better run now. And they were, in my opinion, as prepared as you could be for this situation.
Absolutely. Let's look at this roster then, because I was following some of the roster moves they made. And it's funny you mentioned that, that game, because the 16 years ago for Katrina, that was a preseason game. It was the third preseason game. It was the Baltimore Ravens in the Dome that Saturday night or Saturday. Yeah, I think it was Saturday night. But the text messages, no, it's Friday night, because the text messages started coming through early days of texting, people calling people in the stadium. And there was a murmur in the whole stadium that people kind of pretty much forgot about that game. And they had to play a fourth preseason game in Oakland in 2005. Because I remember watching that. I was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I remember watching that game. In the meantime, hurricane footage and stuff are all coming through. You're trying to play a football game. You're trying to make decisions on who to keep and who to cut. And they're all paying more attention to what's happening in the town. When are we going to go home? Are we going to go home?
Right. So because 99% of the players and the franchise had only really packed for that week, and were stranded out in Oakland because they couldn't get home in most cases. And obviously, players, many players' families, they don't travel with them all the time. And even the ones they did were in the same position. You only have a week worth of belongings, if that, usually only a couple of days. That I remember reading stories and hearing stories about that. We're both friends with several Saints players that were on that team. Actually, Willie Whitehead was still there. Joe Horn. They were just talking about how eerie, the situation, even the Ravens game that you talked about, the preseason game before Katrina. My heart feels for anybody that went through that then, and is certainly going through something similar now.
Yeah, I mean, that was the hardest part about that whole season, was get them. How do you focus on playing football when so much craziness is going on? Green Bay was upset, or the general manager for Green Bay was upset that we were willing to host the game at Lambeau Field. And it's like, oh, yeah, I bet you were. It had been just like the Giants game back in 2005, where the Saints had a home game in Giants Stadium. Yeah, and surprisingly, the Saints lost that because the crowd wasn't with them. I mean, it's just they're not going to do that again. It's like I said, it's lessons learned from 16 years ago. And it's funny. I was doing some research, all this week from August 27th or 25th to about September 6th is like Hurricane Central for every major hurricane that's come through. And I'm going back as far as Betsy in 1965. That came like September 4th. But, Katrina was the 29th. Ida's the 29th. Harvey was the 27th, I think. Laura was the 25th. I mean, Isaac was the 29th, I believe. Gustav was around that same time. All these major hurricanes, it's almost like, let's just take this week out of the calendar, because I don't want to look at these dates anymore. These are the worst dates because, because the league went to a 17-game season and we lost a preseason game, we now had this extra week off of no football. There should be preseason games. If we're playing a 4-game preseason schedule, there should be a preseason game this weekend. There isn't. So, and I think it's because the Thursday night kickoff game, they always complain that, they didn't get a full week of preparation.
Right.
Even if you push all the games to Friday and Saturday, you're still not getting a full week preparation for that game. with the cuts and waiver wire moves and everything else that you're going to do leading up to that Thursday. So they've basically given you a week off. So we don't have a football game at all this week. We won't have one until the 12th. The kickoff game is what, the 9th, September 9th, I think, or 10th? Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a very strange situation. Yeah, Jerry's pointing out he went to Kenner on Monday. Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I'm still in Facebook groups from my old Harvey Golf days, and one of them's offshore supply vessels, and I saw what Port Fourchon looks like, and that's where the storm came in from, and it's unbelievable the amount of destruction. I'm looking at ships that were on dry dock that are shoved on dry land. I don't know how they're going to get those, and these are big boats. These are not like your fishing boat or a shrimping boat. These are 270, 300 footers that got thrown up on land from the storm surge and everything. So I promise you we're not going to spend the whole time talking about hurricanes because I got enough to think about just driving back tomorrow. Let's talk about this roster because there's a lot of interesting things that happen on this roster. Let's look at cornerbacks first. The Saints kept 3 cornerbacks and went heavy on safeties. Now, granted, P.J. Williams and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson play the nickelback, but you only really have 3 outside corners on this team. And Ken Crawley was hurt. He may be healthy enough to play next Sunday, not this weekend coming up, but next Sunday. What do you think about that? I mean, was that surprising to you?
It actually didn't when I looked at the players that were involved. First of all, the fact that they did keep only 3, tells you that they feel pretty confident that Ken Crawley is going to be a healthy go for September 12th. Otherwise, you would think that they would have used some common sense and really hit the market. Looking for an established veteran that they could plug and play, which by the way they still might do. There's still plenty of time. And I've said, you and I have both said all along that we expect the Saints to look hard at the waiver wire once the initial major cuts were made, especially at 3 positions: cornerback, wide receiver, and now probably defensive tackle. But when you look at the players involved, I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, Ken Crawley, Paulson Adebo, they were no-brainers. They were going to make the squad. Once Brian Poole went on injured reserve, who was predominantly a slot guy anyway, you look at the talent that the Saints had at safety, and it didn't surprise me in the least that they kept extra safeties. Because like you said, P.J. Williams can play slot or outside. Regardless of the way the type of play you get from him, he's capable. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is one of the best slot guys in the league, and he played outside corner very extensively at the University of Florida too. So he's a capable step in. So you have a whole lot of versatility within that safety group. In my mind, Sean Payton looked at a guy like Jeff Heath and the talent that he could bring to the table and decided my team is better off, at least initially, keeping Jeff Heath on the roster than cutting him, maybe not getting him back, if he doesn't clear through waivers or signs with another team. I'd rather keep a talent like Jeff Heath over a guy like Grant Haley, who's an unproven guy, didn't have a real solid camp, nor did the rest of their younger cornerbacks that they did release. Now, they did add a couple to the practice squad this afternoon. But again, there's a whole lot of inexperience there. So did it surprise me? In fact, I think I even mentioned in my prediction article my second prediction article for the 53-man that I felt it was a strong possibility even going in that the Saints would keep an extra safety over a cornerback for all the reasons that I've mentioned.
Yeah. I was a little surprised, not shocked by the moves they made, but I was more surprised, I guess, that Jeff Heath A, made the team, and B, that they really didn't grab a guy off the waiver wire right away. It's almost like they're still looking for somebody. They also went kind of shallow on defensive tackles, which I sort of predicted when I did my, way too early before training camp started, prediction of the final 53. I said that they were going to probably go heavy on defensive ends and light on defensive tackles. And that's exactly what they did. They did 3 defensive tackles, 3 true defensive tackles. Now, Onyemata doesn't count because he's suspended right now.
Right.
But it's really just Christian Ringo, Shy Tuttle, and Malcolm Roach.
Now, they did add a 4th today, Alan. They signed Montravius Adams. He started his first 4 years in the Green Bay Packers and got cut by the Patriots this preseason. He's a true defensive tackle, and they added him to the active roster. Now, again, a lot of things are going to change with both the 53-man roster and the practice squad between now and September 10th, 11th, whenever they have to have that their active roster in for that weekend's game. But as of right now, they did at least add a 4th defensive tackle. But I was like you, I sort of expected, certainly wasn't surprised that they went light on defensive tackle. Because we've seen, Tano Passanio, see a lot of reps during the during the 2 preseason games at defensive tackle. Now he's not an early down guy there. He's not the guy that you want in short yardage or goal line situations. But again, Passanio, Peyton Turner played some tackle in college, and we've seen Cam Jordan shift inside before on those NASCAR pass rush packages. So they have some versatility at that edge. Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is just a big challenge for defensive line coach Ryan Nelson. The guy you and I both loved. Unfortunately, he tore his triceps muscle. Dalton. I really thought he had a great shot of starting, and he probably pushes Christian Ringo out if he doesn't injure himself. Ringo probably becomes a practice squad candidate who they would pull up. Shy Tuttle was kind of on the bubble, but I think they were going to keep Tuttle just as a rotational guy, with Malcolm Roach. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do this, defensive line rotation, because you've got to think they're going to kick some of these defensive ends inside at some point on early downs. And I think, a guy like Peyton Turner and probably Davenport even could play some inside work, and then you could put somebody like Granderson on the outside. So that's going to be something to watch. We'll see how this goes because they already play the big nickel as their base defense. So you got to think it's a lot more speed oriented, not run stuffing, no heavy lunch bunch anymore.
I couldn't agree more. And listen, these young tackles, they didn't disrupt the pass pocket a whole lot. But they did get some. They did stalemate the running game fairly well, especially against the Ravens. I noticed. And they did bring back Josiah Bronson and Albert Huggins today for their practice squad. And Huggins and Bronson both had some nice moments in camp. And we have seen guys, Shy Tuttle and Malcolm Roach being 2 of them, come off the practice squad as undrafted rookies and give some contributions, to the Saints defensive line. Taylor Stallworth a couple years ago, same thing. So you do like what they have here, but I'm with you. I mean, they have so much talent at that edge. They're going to want to keep as much of it on the field as often as possible. So, in pass rush packages, I would be very surprised if we didn't see some combinations of, Davenport, Granderson, Jordan, and Peyton Turner all on the field at the same time.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about wide receiver, then we'll jump over to the linebackers. But I want to talk about wide receiver from the standpoint of depth. We already saw that Callaway and Harris are going to be your starting outside receivers. And your slot guy, they let Hogan go. Yeah. So you're looking at Tre'Quan Smith and Ty Montgomery as your primary slot guys. How do you feel about the receiving core?
I love Callaway and Harris, and I think they're both in line for big years. I said that even before Thomas's ankle surgery, reared its ugly head. I really like that they moved Ty Montgomery from a running back to a receiver. I think he's more of a natural pass catcher anyway. So I like the fit there. I actually like the type of camp that Lil Jordan Humphrey had. He's not going to beat any defense at this level down the field. But he fights well. He through short and intermediate routes. And they really like him. They love his blocking, and like I said, he's going to battle and give Jameis Winston a target at least in short yardage and through the intermediate zones. Traquan Smith, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I've made my opinion very, very well known over and over again. I hope I'm wrong. Because this receiving core. I told you already, I love Callaway and I love Harris, but it's not going to impress anybody on paper. And you want to give your new quarterback as many weapons as possible. They brought back, Kevin White and Aesop Winston for the practice squad today, but they really need somebody else. And you and I have been saying it all training camp. They need somebody else to step up and be a reliable, consistent pass catching threat. If it's not from this roster, and they haven't shown that it is, then they have to go out and get one. And the Saints have shown no interest in doing so.
That's what's shocking to me. The list of names that came out of guys that were released, there was nobody on there that jumps out at you. Some people were saying Rashad Perryman because of his history with Winston and Tampa.
Right.
But there was really nobody on there that really jumped out and said, oh, yeah, that's somebody that, we probably should make a move on. He's a good slot guy. He's a good first down guy. There was nobody out there like that. And I don't know if that's criticism of receivers that are coming out in the NFL now, or that we're going through a youth movement in the NFL receiving world where you're seeing a lot more younger receivers coming in, and veterans are being kind of phased out. So the kind of guys that are out there really aren't upgrades to what you may have already on your roster. And that is kind of concerning because, Calvin, they did put Kevin White on the practice squad. They did re-sign him. I think Kevin White will probably get called up a couple times.
Me too.
Depending on the matchups. I think this is one of those. We're going to talk about this too. They released the kicker today in a procedural move because if you release the kickers or release veteran players, and a certain amount of time passes, then you add them back to your roster. You only have to pay them for the games they actually play or active for, not the entire season. And the kicker makes a lot of sense because you're only using him temporarily until Will Lutz is healthy. So you don't want his his salary on your salary cap roster all the way through the season. Once he's gone, he's gone. I hear you. They added I'll tell Calvin real quick. They added Quan Baker, Winton McManus, the linebacker, Kevin White, tight end Ethan Wolf, defensive tackle Albert Huggins, cornerback Brian Mills, offensive lineman Caleb Benoch. It's Beneoch. I don't even remember this guy, but Josiah Bronson, defensive tackle, Aesop Winston, the receiver, the fullback, and which is interesting, again, they cut both fullbacks, Alex Arma and defensive back Kavari Russell make up the 11-man practice squad. Once again, we have the expanded practice squad versus the smaller one. I think this is going to probably become a norm. I think the coaches like having a larger practice squad to rotate players through. So,
and they did. In addition to Montravis Adams, they also signed Adam Prentice, rookie fullback that got cut from Denver. So he's going to get the first shot. But I raised an eyebrow when I read that they had cut Alex Arma yesterday, even though, like you said, he was added back to the practice squad today. But then I saw that they kept 4 tight ends, and the 4th tight end was Garrett Griffin. Well, folks, that's your fullback if you don't have one on the roster.
Yeah, he's an H-back, definitely an H-back kind of player. And, it looks like we're going to be relying a lot on Juwan Johnson this year as a receiving tight end. You're going to see him line up in the slot. You're going to see him line up outside the numbers, probably more in the 4 wide receiver package where you have either a Humphreys or a Smith in the slot, and your tight end is your 4th guy.
Yep.
Or I hate to say it, Taysom Hill in the slot.
Yeah.
And then your tight end outside the numbers. I think that's just how they're looking at things, and it's disappointing to me because the Saints need a veteran receiver, and I'm glad they brought Kevin Smith back, despite him dropping those passes. If you watched him run his routes, he runs them like an NFL receiver. You see the talent.
Oh yeah, and even those 2 drop passes against Jacksonville, he created separation because of his route and because of his cut, and that's what jumped out to me. I mean, guys got to hold on to the ball to keep a job, obviously, but he was making some nice catches in practice, the week prior, right after he was signed. I believe, it doesn't matter what I believe. I agree with Sean Payton giving him another shot, if it's only on the practice squad. And what you said a few minutes ago about seeing Kevin White on the active roster, I do expect to see it. And look, you never know what can happen with these guys.
When I wrote my little review of the 53, I said one of the biggest concerning things for me is you're counting on Callaway and Harris, who in a limited role last year both got hurt. Callaway had that great game, then he gets injured the next game. And you're going to count on these guys in a more expanded role now. That's scary for me, because unlike a Michael Thomas, who until last season was the guy who was there answering the bell every week, was out there playing every week and produced every week. That's an unknown. And when you're playing with a new quarterback and a lot of new pieces on offense, that's a scary prospect to know how consistent is your offense going to be if, let's say, Callaway gets hurt against Green Bay, or Harris gets hurt the following week. I don't even have the schedule in front of me right now, but he gets hurt the following week, and now you're relying on a guy like a Traquan Smith or a
who's never been able to stay healthy.
Who has never been able to stay healthy either. Or I call Lil Jordan Humphreys kind of a poor man's Brandon Coleman. Shows a lot of flashes, makes the occasional catch, but you're not somebody that is going to be your game in, game out, make the critical catch on 3rd down to move the chains kind of guy. And then you're also counting Juwan Jamison as your pass catching tight end, because we don't know what Adam Trautman can do. He's really been used more as a blocker more than a pass catcher, both his rookie year and so far in preseason. How is he going to respond? Is he going to be more like Dan Arnold, or is he going to be more of a better pass catching, what you thought Dan Arnold was going to be? That's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And don't forget that both Adam Trautman and Nick Vannett, both of whom had disappointing training camps, they're both hurt. Which is another reason why I think they carried 4 tight ends into the regular season. Vannett, we were hearing, would miss 2 to 4 weeks. So even on the light side of that, he's a 50-50 shot for the Green Bay season opener. And the only thing we've heard about Adam Trautman is that it's not serious, but we've heard no timetable. So again, you're dealing with not only question marks as far as previous consistency or experience. But now, two of your four tight ends are going into the season opener injured and questionable on whether they're going to be even available to play that particular day.
Exactly. And, all that is a huge cloud over this opener. You're playing Jacksonville, got a lot of questions, got a new quarterback. What is this team going to be like? Mm-hmm. So let's get past the negative now. Let's look at the positives on this team. Offensive line. I think we've got a fantastic offensive line if they can all stay healthy, which is a question, for every position on this team. But sure. Let's look at this offensive line. You've got two all-pro tackles in Armstead and Ramczyk. You've got, despite the negative criticism, and I'm going to hear the laughter, Andres Pete is a Pro Bowl, guard. There's a consistency issue, absolutely. I mean, and it could be within the game itself. One half he looks like some free agent cast off, and the next half he looks like the reincarnation of every best guard you can think of in the NFL, killing people. It just depends on the opponent, and it seems to be, how his mind is on that game plan. Yeah. And then Cesar Ruiz, who's had a fantastic camp, looks like night and day between his rookie year and this year. They're probably going to be more of a right-handed team again. And then Eric McCoy, who probably should be either a Pro Bowl or, if not, an All-Pro center. You've got a lot of strength in this team. You've got Alvin Kamara back there, who probably could be a candidate for the 1,000 season. 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. So there's a lot of strengths that can carry this team. If you're unsure about the receiving core, you've got Alvin Kamara in there. He probably can carry this team until Michael Thomas is ready, if Callaway and Harris falter.
Yeah, absolutely. Alvin Kamara, I predicted last year, in preseason would be 1,000 guy, which has only been done three other times in NFL history. And he would have had his 1,000 yards rushing if he didn't get careless with COVID protocols at the end of the year. He would have had his 1,000-yard receivings if Taysom Hill didn't step in at quarterback for 4 games, because the dump-off game in Kamara was completely forgotten about as a receiver. So you have your talent there. Knock on wood again if he stays healthy. Sean Payton. I don't know how much I like Tony Jones, and I certainly love what he did in training camp and preseason. But you don't pencil the guy in for a Pro Bowl just yet. He has to prove it when the games count. And by that flip side, Latavius Murray has proven it when the games count. And one thing we know about Sean Payton, he knows how to use running backs, to get the most effectiveness out of them. Even journeyman or middle of the road running backs. So you need to, you've got to have confidence in that running back room. And again, you have the best offensive line in front of you, like you said. And even a sixth man in James Hurst, who's a proven starter, both inside and outside. For someone to fall back on, if an Armstead or a Pete goes down for a couple of games, knock on wood. Again, back to the receivers real quick. Callaway has a tremendous rapport with Jameis Winston. That much is obvious. We have seen Deontay Harris look like he was a real up-and-comer in this offense before he got hurt last year. Mm-hmm. And Ty Montgomery, he's not a 1,000-yard receiver. He's not going to be a Pro Bowl receiver. But he's a dependable veteran at the position. I think this offense has some pieces in that if you get good quarterback play and good play up front, which we do expect, the Saints are going to be able to move the football and should be able to put points on the board.
Yeah, a lot of people were like excited because Winston's going to be playing at quarterback, and they're like, finally we get the deep ball back. Like, the deep ball hasn't been gone that long, guys. I mean, it really hasn't. It's kind of, like I said a few weeks ago, I don't know when all Saints fans became Al Davis. It's just like, it's almost like they want the Raiders thing, and we're going to be able to throw a deep ball again. But this team is going to win football games by controlling the clock, by using the short pass as an extension of the running game, and by putting pressure on the opposing team to play keep up, not keep away, but keep up with the Saints, because
sideline to sideline and matchups.
Yeah, Peyton is going to be able to scheme points on this board. He is going to be able to scheme guys to get open and move the chains and get points on the board. Some of these games can be close. Some of these games can be frustrating as all hell, because you're like, come on, we got to put these guys away, and it's going to feel like these teams are hanging around. But when you total up the end of the game, you got to look at all the stats, and the Saints on the plus on all the stats. Most importantly, they got to be on all the plus on the giveaway takeaway ratio. But I think this defense will play well enough to keep the offense in the game, and the offense is going to be able to do enough. I'm sorry, I got to share this one. You'll like it. Trey is useful is eating fried chicken with a knife and a fork.
I love you, Calvin, and you're absolutely correct.
Oh, that's hilarious. But yeah, this team is going to have to be able to control the clock and put the game away in the fourth quarter. I mean, I think that's really what we're looking at. This is going to be a team that's going to they're not going to jump on you early like you're used to seeing, where they get up 28 points, 30 points in the first half, and then the second half kind of just run the ball and kind of control the clock and make the other offense have to throw the ball over the place just to play catch up. It's not going to be that kind of team. Or even better, score before halftime, get the ball back in the second half, score again, and put the pressure on it. It's not going to be that kind of team this year. I think it's going to be much more of I don't want to say conservative, because that's not accurate, but it's going to be much more of a ball control, what Jim Mora wanted his team to be, but with better play calling and better weapons. Which brings to the other thing, speaking of Jim Mora, linebacker position. 7 linebackers. I can't tell you the last time the Saints had 7 linebackers on the roster before week 1.
It's probably been since Jim Mora. And listen, people were projecting or predicting that the Saints would keep 5 linebackers. I've felt all along, especially once they re-signed Quan, that they were going to keep 6. And just like we talked about with the safeties before, I think that Sean Payton recognized the talent that he had at that position, and certainly Dennis Allen had to have had a lot of feedback on this one. And they just they just felt like that all 7 linebackers that they kept, and like you said earlier, they added McManus to the practice squad too, so they got 8 linebackers in the building. That there was just too much talent there. It would not surprise me, and I haven't heard anything from any sources, but it would not surprise me if they moved a linebacker, at the back half of the depth chart. If they have a trade opportunity to bring in, say, a cornerback that they like, or God forbid, a wide receiver, they can get a little bit of consistent separation. This is just a guess on my part, but you're going to see these linebackers get used in different ways. Remember, Quan Alexander might not be healthy to start the season. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't. So Zach Bond played lights out in the preseason. But again, he's inexperienced. So are you going to fall back on Pete Werner, who's inexperienced and missed the last couple of weeks in both preseason games? This is where you have to have the shotgun approach. You just scatter shot thinking you're going to hit something. So if Quan's unable to be healthy to start the season, Bond and Werner struggle a little bit with inexperience, then you start falling back to a guy like Caden Ellis, Andrew Dowell, or even Chase Hansen, thinking that one of those guys or a combination of them are going to give you what you need at athleticism and positioning wise, which is just as important as athleticism, is being in the right position and diagnosing plays. As what Quan is able to do once he gets back 100% healthy.
Well, and you mentioned a good point. I think Zach Vaughn kind of takes the pressure off of Quan to come out there and be ready to go week one, because we need to have you out there. You're the only guy out there who's talented enough to be out there with Demario Davis. I think Vaughn has proven that with his ability sideline to sideline and his attacking, that he is somebody who can come out there and play. You can actually go back to 3 linebackers instead of the big nickel as your base defense. So it gives you a lot more flexibility. And honestly, I think Warner gets a red shirt this year. I think he does play a little, but I think he's going to be on special teams a lot, and we're going to hear on Saints Twitter and things like that the bust pick, and that kind of stuff, because he's not going to be out there playing on every down. But you don't have to rush him along. You can kind of take your time with him, get him acclimated, and see where he best fits in. And God forbid, if Quan gets hurt again, you're not pulling back a Stephon Anthony or Craig Robertson or guys that you've gone back to, a Michael Marty, if you want to go back a few years. You're not grabbing guys like that anymore to put in his spot. You can actually play with a guy who is not going to be a handicap like Alex Anzalone was in the Tampa playoff game. So don't discount Pete Warner, but don't be surprised if he kind of has a redshirt year this year. I'm really excited about this. I think, Chase and Dowell and did I say his name right? Dowell. It might be Dowell.
I say Dowell, but yeah.
Yeah, Dowell and Caden Ellis. I think those guys will be your special team studs. What Robinson was good at. They know they can always go back to Craig Robertson if, God forbid, we get like a 2016, 2015, play come through and wipe out the entire linebacker room. You can pull somebody like that off the street, but, you're not relying on a Manti Te'o or something like that we've had before. It's really a good linebacking core that gives you a lot of flexibility, and it's not a one-man show anymore, and I'm really excited about that. And I think that's going to be a strength of this team too. Donald's asking about Montavious Adams. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about him. What do you know about Montavious Adams? I mean, we kind of talked a little bit.
He's a big-bodied guy. Came out of Auburn, 3rd-round pick in 2017 by Green Bay, and that light switch just never turned on for him. He's got all the measurables. He's 6'4". I think goes about 310. Good athlete. He plays a little bit high, which allows offensive linemen, those interior offensive linemen especially, to get leverage on him. Get at his legs and knock him out of a play. And he didn't, like I said, he played 45 games and since 17 for the Packers. Pedestrian stats, rotational guy. But again, if the Saints can get 5 to 7 quality snaps, if he's on the game day active roster, if the Saints can get 5 to 7 quality snaps from him, either against the run or the pass, then that checks off the box that they need. Because you and I just spoke about earlier, we might not need as many reps at defensive tackle from the tackles that we've gotten before. So they can just keep rotating guys. Tuttle, Adams, Ringo, Roach. Bringing in your edge rushers to slot them inside on obvious pass rush downs. So that way you don't need your defensive tackles necessarily to collapse the pocket on every down. You just need them to stalemate the run and to push the pass pocket on 1st and 2nd down passing opportunities.
Yeah, and you also have, because we just talked about the linebacker depth, you have you've got ability now in your linebacker. You can blitz linebackers and not really sacrifice a whole heck of a lot like you were before. when you had lesser linebackers out there in coverage. Teams will have a hard time going away from. I mean, I can't tell you how many times the bootleg would kill me. That like they'd never seen a bootleg in their life. The quarterback would run a bootleg, and the linebacker's in limbo, doesn't know if he should follow the back or go after the quarterback because the rest of the defense. Oh my God, you can do this? This is legal? I mean, yeah, we saw Zach Bond say, "Oh, you're gonna run a bootleg? That's your ass. I'm coming after you." Went right after the quarterback and made him throw it away early. Didn't sit and hesitate, didn't guess. He knew the bootleg was coming and took the angle and was waiting for him. I was like, thank God. We finally have somebody that. All we need now is, Donald Woods is joining us here. As about the cornerback depth. All we need now is cornerbacks who know when a rub is coming and switch. That's the only other thing I'm asking for. You see the rub is coming, switch, and be waiting for the pass because it's coming right to you. Talk to each other.
But like you said about linebackers, for how many years now, the linebackers have been the Achilles heel, not only of this defense, but the entire team. You would have a guy that was athletic enough, Stephon Anthony, Alex Anzalone, but just so poor at diagnosing plays. Or on the flip side, you'd have a guy that could diagnose a play, Michael Mahdi, Manti Te'o, but just wasn't athletic enough to keep up. And both of those situations always spelled disaster. How often, and you could close your eyes and see it. How often would we see a running back, 5 yards ahead of the pursuing linebacker because of either poor position or poor athleticism, or a tight end 10 yards downfield wide open, on a 3rd and 8 play that should have been easy to stop, because the linebackers weren't able to keep up in coverage or just had poor zone diagnosis. And all of these guys, every single one of them, with the exception of Demario Davis, they do have a weakness to their game. Bond's inexperienced still, especially in coverage. But I think he's coming along. Ellis isn't a real athletic guy. Hanson and Dowell aren't real big. You don't want them taking on linemen. But collectively, you have a group that is versatile enough to play inside or outside, versatile enough to blitz the passer or drop back into coverage and not be a liability. Everything that you just checked off, this is going to be, I think Dennis Allen and Ryan Nielsen, who of course coaches the defensive line, but is still an assistant coach, they're going to have a lot of fun with this front seven this year.
Yeah, there's a lot of options they can do. And, it was a big concern of mine coming into training camp. And I have to say that I am pleasantly surprised at how well and how much they've got out there to play with, essentially. They have guys out there who can do stuff, and they fit together well. It's not like you've got – this is the other concern I had when we first looked at it on paper. And they said, we're going to move Bond to weak side linebacker. I'm like, well, that's Demario Davis' spot already. So how many weak side linebackers do we have? Who the hell can play strong side linebacker? Who's your middle linebacker? You got a bunch of weak side linebackers on this roster. But and a lot of this is my thinking of how I learned the game back when dinosaurs roamed the earth versus the way the game is played today. The game today is built far more on speed than it is so much power and strength like it used to be. Even as late as the early 2000s, where you needed big, heavy defensive tackles inside, and you needed those big, tall, strong, fast pass rushers on the outside defensive ends, or the old 3-4, where you had linebackers, outside linebackers that could rush the quarterback, and inside linebackers who just took care of the run. That is kind of gone away because it's so much more of a speed, space, positioning game that honestly, if you tried to play the dome patrol defense today with those same athletes, they would get exposed because They were not guys like Sam Mills and Vaughn Johnson were not guys that function well in space. They were
No.
guys who function well getting inside and rocking you and beating you with angles. It's just how the game has changed. That's all. It's not a knock on their athleticism. It's just this is the way the game is played today versus the way it was played 40 years ago now. I hate to say it like that, but yeah, 1981 was 4 years ago. Not in my mind. 1970 was 30 years ago. But in football terms, yeah, it's just a totally different kind of game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the personnel that the Saints have in their front seven. Yeah, again, defensive tackle has some question marks that both you and I pointed out. But they like the pieces that they have there, and they certainly have so many options with what they could do with their edge guys, moving them inside. And Donald, you asked about cornerback depth. I like what Adebo showed us in the preseason a lot, and I love his physical tools. I loved him the night they drafted him. Crawley, say what you will about Crawley, he's playing really strong right now, and until he doesn't, there's no need, no need necessarily to look at his replacement. Marshawn, knock on wood, we still haven't heard any potential suspension, from Dictator Goodell's office. So we're keeping our fingers. Hey, that's definitely a positive sign. I still think that this team needs to bring in another, another starting caliber cornerback for me to have a little bit more confidence in this position,
though. And he's pointing out the size of Adebo. Adebo, and I do agree with some of the pre-draft reports. Had Adebo played his senior year, and it was a normal senior year, not a COVID senior year, he probably is a first-round pick. He's probably being mentioned up there with the Greg Newsoms and the guys that were, Patrick Surtain's kid, Asante Samuel. He's probably mentioned in that group because he is, as you said, he's 215 pounds. He shows a lot of physical ability. Is he, he's probably a bottom half of the first round, top of the second round kind of guy, and you got him in the third. And he's not your number one corner. Lattimore seems to be playing for a contract this year, and I hope he plays consistently. And if Lattimore can play at his rookie year level or better, I think it takes pressure off of Adebo to be that shutdown guy. You can kind of rotate coverage to help him, but Adebo is showing that he has the ability to be at least that number two guy that you're not hurting as bad as you think you would without Jack Rabbit on the team,
Yeah, absolutely. And Adebo has the traits of a number one corner, and like you said, they don't have to press him into that right away, because you have one of the best cornerbacks in the league. My opinion, he's top three or four. Marshawn, when he has his head screwed on straight, and Marshawn has struggled with consistency. There's no question. But like you said, he's had a very strong camp. He's in a contract year. After the first 4 or 5 games were out of the way last year, Lattimore played the best ball of his career. If he could do that again, like you said, they have such a strong safety core that you can rotate that coverage to help out Adebo, to help out Crawley. You can play kind of a matchup coverage, a coverage shuffle, with Adebo and Crawley, because those two are going to be on the field together a lot, with so many multi-receiver formations, especially with what we're going to see out of Green Bay. So, those guys are going to get a trial by fire coming right out of the gate in week 1.
Absolutely. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has Devontae Adams. He's got they brought back I just forgot his name. I had it a second ago before I clicked that. I can picture him. I just cannot think of his name. I'm sure someone's going to put it up in a second.
Well, I can't either. That's why I'm cheating. I have my Lindy guide right to my left. They have Alan Lazard.
Yeah, it's not him. It's the guy they brought back from last year, from previous years. Old, reliable receiver.
Shoot.
Come on. Let's see. It's taking a while for this thing to load.
He was number 18 too, or at least did before when he played in Green Bay.
Yes, that is exactly what I'm thinking of. Randall Cobb.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Now he's an 11-year veteran, but he is somebody who has history with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is going to go to him. So they've got a lot of weapons. So they're really going to stress this defense. So it's going to be all hands on deck. And Rodgers, he's difficult to sack, and he doesn't turn the ball over very much. So when you do get a turnover from him, you've got to make the Packers pay. And we're going to talk more about that next week when we preview the Saints-Packers game, because obviously there'll be a week off between shows here where there's no new football. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a heck of a challenge for this defense. And the worst thing I think could happen is like what we saw a couple of years ago. And this is a disadvantage last year. And this is a disadvantage of, Ida happening. Aaron Rodgers is going to get to play in a relatively quiet stadium in Jacksonville again. And I thought part of the reason why the Saints lost last year was that Rodgers got to play in a relatively empty stadium where he could make his checks and pick the defense apart. Rodgers doesn't do well when he gets a lot of pressure on him. Rodgers doesn't do well with loud crowds where he cannot communicate with his receivers. And, that is a disadvantage of this game being in Jacksonville. I like the idea of the Saints playing open-air stadium as a home game. It reminds me of old Tulane Stadium. It's going to be hot as hell, just like how Tulane Stadium would be. But, yeah, that's probably the most frustrating thing. It's the Packers we have to play away from the Dome and away from 70,000 people. He can have a full house, but it's not going to be the same as what it is like in that Dome. The acoustics are still not the same.
Yeah, you're right. And another big factor, and Aaron Rodgers and the Packers rely a lot more than what people realize on the running game and Aaron Jones. And the Saints, as good a run defense as they typically play, they didn't do real well against Aaron Jones last year. So you need to make, and like you said, we're going to break down, the Packers Saints game and so much more detail next week. But you need to, especially in an open air stadium, without all of your usual home fans around you, you need to shut down the running game and put as much pressure on Rodgers to try to force him. And to potentially just even a couple bad decisions, that could result in a quick 3 and out or even a turnover, and then put the onus back on Jameis Winston, and that we'll call it new, but new look Saints offense to try to take advantage of whatever opportunities they get, and that's going to be the story of the season, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I left this up for a second here from Donald. You realize that Dennis Allen has been the longest tenured Saints defensive coordinator under Sean Payton? Did you realize that?
It doesn't surprise me to hear. I hadn't thought much about it. I hadn't thought because coach has gone through his DCs, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, because his initial hire. Come on, from Dallas. Gibbs. I was Gary Gibbs. I kept thinking, I was like, no, it's not Alex Gibbs. Alex Gibbs is the offensive line coach who passed away, but taught zone blocking schemes. But Gary Gibbs was only there for 4 years, 2006 to 2008. Actually, Yeah, 4 seasons, 2006, 7, 8, 3 seasons, because he fired him after the 2008 season, and then of
Mhm.
course 3 years for um, Greg Williams. 9, 10, and 11. Then we had Spagnola for 12. Then you had Ryan uh, for 13, 14, and he got fired midway through the 15 season.
Yeah.
So you've had Dennis Allen for 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6 seasons. Six
Wow.
seasons.
And
Um,
and like you say, he took over for Ryan in 2015 and was the secondary coach, for at least 4 or 5 years
yeah,
before that.
he was secondary
And
coach.
before,
Yeah,
before he got his a stint with the Raiders coaching head coach,
yeah,
and then defensive coordinator at Denver before he came back here.
yeah. So I mean, that's an impressive statistic for me
Mm-hmm.
because for a while there, it seemed like nobody was good enough to be the Saints defensive coordinator. And to me, it's no coincidence that once Allen got better players for his defense, the defense magically got better
Yeah.
each year under his coaching, his schemes. We're not hearing we should fire Dennis Allen and bring in guys. We don't hear that much at all. I mean, we get frustrated with the playoff losses, but that really shows that Peyton has put together a solid staff. And in fact, people were kind of concerned. I think it was 2020. Might have been this off season too. They were concerned that Dennis Allen probably would get hired as a head coach somewhere else, that we could lose him. We lost several coaches, Aaron Glenn, Joe Lombardi, Dan Campbell, but we haven't lost, the main coaches. I know that LSU tried to steal Ryan Nielsen, the defensive line coach, and Sean Payton told him, hell no. Which tells you to me that if Dennis Allen does ever get offered a head coaching job, Ryan Nielsen is Peyton's choice to take over the defense. He really likes that guy. And I think the development of all these guys, the Malcolm Roaches and the Shai Tuttles and even the Stallworth and guys like Anyamata, undrafted free agents and raw draft choices, goes directly to Ryan Nelson.
So, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge Ryan Nelson fan. I love the fact that when they managed to block his potential departure to LSU, that they slapped that assistant coach tag on him, looking at the offense, Joe Lombardi is going to be a bigger loss than what people realize. Sean Payton is the play caller; he is the offensive guru, but that was such a key three-headed monster. Payton, Carmichael, and Lombardi in that offensive room with Breeze. I defy you to find four more capable offensive minds. That's going to be a very interesting adjustment on the offensive side. But defensively, Dennis Allen, I've always been a fan of. I love Ryan Nielsen, and even Michael Hodges is an up and coming linebacker coach. He learned a whole lot, from being under the wing of Mike Nolan, the defensive mastermind the year that Nolan was here, and it really shows. You saw this entire unit really play above their physical capabilities outside of Demario Davis, again, who's a beast. But Nolan brought out the best in the rest of those linebackers, and we're seeing Hodges kind of do the same thing.
Absolutely. I've been very impressed with this coaching staff, and I think that has we know about Curtis Johnson, and that's why the receivers, you've been able to go through a lot of undrafted free agents and turn them into legitimate receivers, at least in our system, because of that. And something you had mentioned earlier about missing Joe Lombardi. Pete Carmichael, he has now got to forge a relationship with a new quarterback. Carmichael came with Breeze from San Diego under Marty Schottenheimer's staff, and that was a good we don't really talk a whole heck of a lot about Carmichael because we know Sean Payton calls the plays, but Carmichael has a lot to do with the design of the offense.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be an interesting transition without having Breeze there. How does this dynamic work between Winston, Payton, and Carmichael? Go back to the 2011 Monday night game against the Giants, where they brought the cameras in and showed you the Saturday night meeting, well, in this case, a Sunday night meeting because it was a Monday night game, where they sat there and they went through the plays, and Breeze just starts rattling off names of plays that he likes and he thinks really work well. Teddy Bridgewater, when he was there, wanted to have that meeting again, wanted to have that meeting with the coach and go through a couple plays. I'm curious to see how this develops with Winston at quarterback, how these meetings go. Does he have a list of plays that he likes and wants to get them called? What's his name? Peter King. Before the Philadelphia game, I think in 2018, might have been 2019. The 2019, because that was the year they hung 45 points on the Eagles and played them again in the playoffs. They had that meeting. And, Peter King got to sit and listen to it. And here they're coming up with plays that night that they're going to call the next day. They're checking these things off. And, Peter King just fascinated by this discussion among the three of them. This is what we're going to do Sunday. And we're going after cornerback so-and-so. And we're going to expose him because he's been hurt and he struggles with this. We're going right at him in the first play and get him out of the game and make them substitute with a weaker cornerback. It was a fascinating thing, but it's how this game is played. And that's the advantage Sean Payton has as a head coach and a play caller. So I'm really curious to see how this relationship goes from here, because that was the secret to Drew Brees' success. That merging of the three minds. They all knew what they wanted. And you even hear it on the thing where it says the NFL mic'd up. You hear Sean Payton said, "This is the look we've been waiting for. This is what we know what we're going to get here. This is what we're going to do." One last thing, and I know I'm talking a lot again, but it's just things that come into my mind. You go back to, I know it's painful to watch, but go back to the 2017 Minnesota Vikings versus Saints playoff game, the infamous Minneapolis Miracle. Don't watch the last 10 seconds. Start the game from the second half and watch 29 minutes and 40 seconds worth. That is a work of art to watch Drew Brees take that team apart. And then that book you've got in the background there, Peyton and Brees, he talks about that game. And you go back in that book and watch that thing, that game, and you see how Brees' film study with Peyton's film study, they knew exactly what to do to the Vikings once they figured out what they were running. The touchdown to Michael Thomas to make it, I think, 14-17, where Thomas just runs a slant and nobody's around him, and he gets that quick touchdown pass. They saw that 3 weeks earlier in a game where they ran the ball. So they went into a power formation, just like you would run the ball, even set Josh Hill in motion to make the Vikings defense play the run. Michael Thomas is wide open, and Brees hits him before the defense even realized, oh shit, this is a pass, not a running play. It was a brilliant stroke of genius. I love that game from that point on. It just sucks that 10 seconds happened, that final 10 seconds, because to me, that is like above almost everything else the Saints have ever done. That was one of the most beautiful, especially reading that book, one of the most beautiful illustrations of Peyton and Brees' genius I've ever seen in my life. I really have.
Oh, absolutely. And they did that so many times. I mean, that was the New Orleans Saints from 2006, to really 2018. And Jeff Duncan, did such a terrific job. I like Jeff's work a lot anyway. Jeff Duncan did such a terrific job in this book of taking you inside inside the room with Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Joe Lombardi, Pete Carmichael. Joe and Pete, like you said before, never got enough credit. From the outside world, they certainly got their just due from Drew and Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to find out, how much the team misses Joe Lombardi. Obviously, Drew Brees is going to be missed both on the field and in that room. But we're going to find out real quick how studious Jameis Winston is and how quickly he can get on the right page with Sean Payton. Drew was in charge of those 4-minute and 2-minute drills. But everything that Drew did on the field was already set in place, like you pretty much just pointed out, by everything that they did in the week leading up to. So we're going to find out how good Jameis Winston can be right here. There's going to be some bumps, early on, because that's just natural. But if Sean Payton loses patience with Jameis Winston very quickly, it's because of what's happening up here and what's not happening in the week leading up to all the preparation, game planning, etc. It's really going to be that simple.
Yeah, I mean, people have to realize that, because Sean Payton, just look at how you treated kickers. I mean, you think he's going to be any different with his quarterback? He's a guy who played quarterback. He knows what he should see. So it's going to be a learning curve for him as well. I think Winston has it up here. I think there are times, though, and I've heard this said about him, and I think it's so accurate. There are times where he has that Madden mind for a minute, where you're playing the game of Madden and the receiver's covered, and that you want to go to the X receiver or the up arrow receiver, and you hit the wrong button, and you go, "Why the hell did I just throw that pass? What was I thinking? Oh my God, I was stupid for doing that." I think Winston has those moments.
Yeah.
And the key is, can you shrink those moments or erase most of those moments and get him on the path to be like a Drew Brees? And I think that is the key to making this team continue the winning that they've been doing recently, or is this going to be a start out slow, a battle to 500, get to 500, and then it's a battle to see, can we still make the playoffs with at or around 500? I think that's where we are right now, and that's critical. And we'll see how this plays out in the first few weeks of this season. And it's unfortunate we have Onyemata suspended. It's unfortunate we have Michael Thomas hurt. Those are two guys who can help a guy like Winston not feel the pressure of that he's got to win the game by himself. Donald's also asking about Adam Prentice. Real quick, the stuff I saw about him, he's not a pass catching guy. He's not really a ball carrier. He just looks like he's a sledgehammer who is there for the running game. Is that what you pretty much have read too about him?
Yeah, absolutely. He played Colorado State for 4 years, really active for 3. Graduate transfer from South Carolina, went undrafted, and he's a lunch pail guy. He's an old school guy. I saw a little bit of his film at Colorado State and clicked on what I could see from the Denver Broncos preseason games. He is a hammer of a lead blocker. But I think to be able to stick on the Saints roster, he's going to have to show that he can at least catch an occasional ball out of the backfield. Because Sean respects the lead hammer, but he needs that fullback to be. He needs everybody on that field to be able to catch the ball in any given situation. So if Prentice can prove that he can do that, again, he's not, like you said, he's not going to be a big weapon. But if he can prove he could do that, he is a capable lead blocker for Kamara, Tony Jones, and Latavius Murray.
Yeah. I've said this forever. He's been looking for another Heath Evans since he had Heath Evans. That's really his ideal fullback.
Yeah.
A guy who can block, but it can also catch the ball, run the short yardage play. When it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, instead of, the quarterback going over the top, being able to do the quick handoff and the guy gets 2 yards. That's what he wants in his fullback, as well as somebody who can just blow a linebacker out of the hole. That's that he enjoys that. I think there are times going back in time a little ways when he had Jed Collins, where he used to sit there with a nice bottle of wine and just use the coach's clicker to go back and watch Jed Collins blow a hole through that second level for the running game.
Actually, Jed Collins is probably a decent comparison to what little I've been able to see at Prentice. That he kind of has that style.
Yeah, he and if they can get a little bit of a pass catching, a guy who can sneak out of the backfield, that'll be good. That's ultimately why Mike Carney did not stick around, is because Carney was not a pass catching guy. He could catch the ball, but he more or less fought the ball as it got to him, And I like Mike Carney a lot. I really did. But Carney was probably a guy who, outside of that incredible Dallas game in 2006, Carney was just a guy who he was an undersized guard who came in and knocked people around. All right, Sean obviously couldn't make it tonight. Bob, what are you working on for the rest of this week the fans can be looking for?
And we mentioned at the top of the show the potential schematic or logistic rather issues that would be for the Saints schedule if they are stuck in Dallas or outside of New Orleans beyond September. So I'm going to kind of delve into that in a little bit more detail tomorrow. I'm going to break down some of the roster and maybe why the Saints made some of the roster decisions that they did, at least with the initial 53. Kyle and I are going to be watching, the waiver wire for breaking news very closely, because we expect still a variety of different moves for the Saints to make, certainly through the weekend and well into next week. When I get a little bit of time, it probably released over the weekend. Jameis Winston is the 15th different quarterback to start a season opener for the New Orleans Saints. So I'm gonna kind of look back in history, at the other 14 and how they fared. Spoiler alert: it wasn't very good. Most of them. But I love to do these historical pieces. They're fun. Once we get into the regular season, there's so little time to do that kind of thing. Because right after that, I'm going to, right into next week, we're going to be covering the Packers Saints game from every angle we can think of. John Hendricks, for those of you that follow us at the Saints News Network, Kyle and I have been holding down the fort as best we can. John's family evacuated. They're safe. John stayed. He's safe, but he just recently got power back on and he doesn't have internet. So he's scrounging for a hot meal every night. But he's you're right. But he's safe and sound and is going to get back to work as quick as he can.
Jeff Duncan, speaking of him, put a list up of all the Saints starting quarterbacks since 1967. And it was a list of about 33 names. And, I made a comment that about half of the names on the list went on to start somewhere else. Now, whether or not they were any good, they did in fact start somewhere else. That goes for everybody from, obviously the ultra successful ones like Billy Kilmer and Jake Delhomme, both of whom started for Super Bowl teams. And same with Kerry Collins. They all started with a Super Bowl team. None of them won, but they all at least started for a Super Bowl team. And Kilmer, for example, had a much longer career playing with the Redskins. But, Gary Quazzo started for the Vikings. That was the first starting quarterback in Saints history. Started for the Vikings and the Cardinals. Never really amounted to much, but he was a starter. And then we go all the way to Danny Werfel, who, when Steve Spurrier was trying to recreate the Washington, Florida Gators, he had Werfel start a game for him. Aaron Brooks, after he left here, started a few games for the Raiders. Jeff Blake, we beat him when he started a game against us in 2002 as a quarterback for the Ravens when Aaron Brooks got hurt. So, they have had guys start that came from here. Just very few of them have been successful. And that is true. And Sean Payton actually has not had a good opening day record either.
Yep.
We look at all these wins they've had, but he has lost a lot of week 1 and week 2 games. It's really October, November that this team really hits their stride. So September has not been good months for this franchise.
No, it hasn't. And I remember covering that last year. And even in the offseason, I hit on it. I mean, their October, November record is beyond spectacular. But Sean Payton's New Orleans Saints, well, he's only been the head coach of the Saints. Yeah, Sean Payton has only gone 2-0 to start the season twice.
Yeah.
Twice. And up until, and they've won their last 4 season openers, knock on wood. Before it might be 3. It's either 3 or 4 last season openers.
They lost 2018. That's the last one I remember they lost.
Okay, so 19.
Yeah, because
anyway, before the last couple, he's only been a 500. His teams have only been 500, on opening day. So history does not look kindly on the Saints to open regular seasons.
No, and so like I said, there's even more challenges now compared to what you should normally have a la in 2018 or 2017. It's frustrating because you have these expectations, and the Saints have started either 0-2 or 1-1 a lot under Sean Payton. So don't hit the panic button. Right. If we start out 0-1, and don't make your reservations for the Super Bowl if we start out 1-0.
Right.
Because, chances are we're going to have a letdown right after that. It'll be interesting. We'll get more into that. And I'm looking forward to your story. Because it reminds me of a lot of stuff on opening day. I think prior to Tom Benson buying the Saints in franchise history, I think they only won 2 opening day games from 1967 to like 1984.
It was ugly.
Won 2, maybe 3. I think they won an opening game in 1983. So that's pretty much what the Saints have been like. In 85, they talk about the new Saints under Tom Benson. And I think Dave Lagarde, who was a columnist at the Times-Picayune at the time, said the Saints went from the womb to the tomb in 60 minutes because it was that bad. I think Kansas City just blew the doors off of them in the opening day 1985. So, it's been gritty. It's been tough. Thanks, Bob. For Sean, who unfortunately could not get in, he's dealing with stormy weather. His internet signal was crap. He tried getting in 2 or 3 times, could not get in. So sorry, Sean, you couldn't make it, but he'll be here next week. Bob, thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.